Welcome, 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 my friends, to this new edition of More Bad News, the Christmas edition, brought to you, as always, by Camel Cigarettes. Take the Camels Challenge, smoke Camels for 30 days, and see for yourself what a remarkable difference Camels can make in your life. And remember that there is nothing quite as nice for Christmas or the 8th day of Hanukkah than a carton of Camels as a present for under the tree or by the candles. Well, my friends, it's been another week of very bad news. The Washington Post reported last week that life expectancy in the United States continued its fall in 2021 as COVID and drug deaths surged. U.S. life expectancy, they said, continued its steady, alarming decline in 2021 as COVID-19 and illegal drugs took the lives of hundreds of thousands of Americans. That's a quote. Americans born today can expect to live only as long as those born in 1996, going backwards fast, a dismal benchmark for a measure of health that has risen steadily. 200 years ago, life expectancy in the United States was 35. People died painfully, mostly in infancy or childhood, primarily from diseases such as tuberculosis, typhus, tonsillitis, cholera, dysentery. With a lack of medical understanding of these ailments, and the common treatment was bloodletting. Over the last 200 years, U.S. life expectancy more than doubled to almost 80 years, 78.8 in 2015. And this was the result of vast improvements in public health. However, while most people imagine that medical advances to be the reason for this increase, the largest gain in life expectancy occurred between 1880 and 1920 due to public health improvements such as control of infectious diseases, more abundant, safer foods, cleaner water, and other medical and social improvements. This was a period that I studied because the eugenics movement was part of what was called the social hygiene movement. This period is actually referred to as the first public health revolution, and it occurred before the medical interventions of antibiotics and advanced surgical techniques were in place. Improved sanitation, public water treatment, sewage management, food inspection, municipal garbage collection almost eliminated the causes of death. Also, social advances such as greater understanding of nutrition, better housing conditions, air quality improvements, child labor laws, and higher literacy rates greatly improved overall health and life expectancy. That proud legacy is now in our rearview mirror. Looking forward, we see child mortality rising, along with a very disturbing rise in childhood suicide. I studied the fate of Jewish children during the Holocaust. Adult suicide was very common, but children hardly ever committed suicide despite the horrendous situation that Jews in Europe faced. What we are witnessing today is a civilization in collapse. Children no longer wanting to marry, raise families, falling into despair, and in a state of hopelessness, committing suicide at ages as young as 6, 7, and 8. Of course, the children committing suicide in the greatest numbers today are the LGBTQ kids who have become the targets of Republican politicians seeking scapegoats for their frustrated constituents. Well, today is both Christmas and the 8th day of Hanukkah, not a very common occurrence. Since 1900, the first night of Hanukkah has fallen on Christmas Eve 3 times. Hanukkah has started on Christmas Day 4 times, and there were 8 total occurrences in 117 years. Hanukkah starts on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, roughly once every 15 years. So it's not an entirely rare occurrence, but this is an unusual event with Christmas Day and the 8th day of Hanukkah falling on the same day. The 2 holidays, however, are not at all alike, although both celebrate celebrations of a Messiah. The Christian Messiah came to save all of humanity, while Judah Maccabee, the Jewish Messiah, came to save Judaism and restore animal sacrifice. With the victory of the Maccabees, Jews would continue to sacrifice animals for another 235 years. Judah Maccabee saved us from the Syrians. The idea that a savior would save the world never really occurred to us because we saw ourselves as a tribe, as children of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. And you don't convert your neighbor to your family. We never really got along particularly well with our neighbors. If you read the Torah, you can see that we had these wild fantasies of exterminating our neighbors, particularly the Amalekites. But even the Moabites, who gave us Ruth, didn't really earn our affection. Also, Hanukkah is a distinctly minor holiday. It's no Passover or Rosh Hashanah. You don't need to take off from work or refrain from lighting a fire. While we say Hallel, we don't have a Musaf service, and there is no tractate in the Talmud devoted to Hanukkah, as there is, for example, for Purim, which is another minor holiday. So Hanukkah is about as minor as a Jewish holiday can get. It has been totally distorted, however, by its proximity to Christmas. Christians, on the other hand, Christmas, on the other hand, is right up there with Easter. It's one of the major Christian holidays. As I mentioned last week, had the Maccabees been defeated, the Hellenists would have triumphed, and Judaism would have been entirely assimilated into Greek culture, as were the Idumeans. And had the Jews gone the way of the Idumeans, there would be no Jews today, no Christians or Muslims. There would be today no Abrahamic religion. And I should confess that I have a lot of sympathy for the Hellenists. Again, as I mentioned in passing last week, from my perspective, the Greek influence on Judaism was profound and beautiful and excellent and wonderful. It was the Zoroastrians and the Greeks who were responsible for the beliefs in heaven and hell and life after death. I don't particularly think that's the best part of it. What I really love is, if you study the Song of Songs, that is a typical example of the powerful influence that Greek had on Jewish literature, and it's a wonderful, wonderful set of poems. So I thought for today's special Christmas edition of the show, I would say a few words about my experiences with Christianity and Islam. For many years, after I moved to Ferris, my best friend here in town was Kevin Farrell, pastor of Charity Baptist Church, a Southern Baptist denomination church. I must admit of having a very low opinion of Southern Baptists when I met him, associating them with Jerry Falwell and the Moral Majority. What brought Kevin and I together were our animals. Kevin and I used to walk our dogs together almost every morning, and in those strolls through the woods, we talked about religion a lot. And I was immediately and immensely impressed with his knowledge, not only of the Bible, of literature, but of the history of the church in America, and of his openness. He was somebody who really could take my anger and just turn it around. One Christmas, Kevin was backing out of his driveway, and I told him, "Kevin, I love what you've done to Christmas." And he said, "What's that?" And I said, "Doing away with the Christmas pogrom." And without batting an eye, Kevin shot back, "When I got to heaven, God said, 'Program, stupid.' I said, 'Get them on the program.'" Now, in my old age, I've warmed up to both Christians and Muslims. At first, I found the Saudi students were drawn to my classes. They reminded me a lot of the yeshiva students that I grew up with, religious boys and girls. They would carry my backpack to my car after class. One student brought me spices from his mother's kitchen. Another made me a beautiful decoration. Here, this was above my office door for many years. It's Arabic, and it says Dr. Barry. They showered me with little tokens of appreciation and affection. When Saudi parents came to visit, the children would bring them to meet me. Their affection was palpable. Back to Christmas. The first point I'd like to make is that modern Judaism and Christianity emerged together out of the same cauldron that marked the destruction of the temple and the end of the sacrificial system, the end of Jewish autonomy, the transition from priest to rabbi, from animal sacrifice to synagogue-based prayer, and that all coincided with the birth of Jesus and the destruction of the temple. And there are many, many similarities between early Christianity and early Judaism. I remember reading St. Augustine in North Africa saying, there's so much confusion here. You can hardly tell the difference between a Jew and a Christian here. It's like, yeah, because they really were very close. And it, of course, it's in families that you get the most tension and animosities. It's among brothers and sisters that you can get this kind of crazy fighting over, especially after the death of a parent, over the treasures that have been left to the children, who got more, who got less. Islam emerges much later and is much more tangentially related to Judaism. Christians and Jews already had over 1,000 years of conflict-filled history. For Christians, Jews came to be seen as minions of Satan, whose absolute evil was apparent in their murderous antipathy to God and to God's Son. This animosity would lay the foundation upon which the Holocaust and modern anti-Semitism rests. If there's one idea above all others that drove the development of anti-Semitism, it was the idea that the Jews were responsible for deicide. Muslims never made that accusation. The Golden Age of Spain aside, Jews and Muslims have also had a very problematic history, but for all the animosity that existed between Jews and Muslims, Jews never killed Muhammad. The opposite was true. Muhammad defeated the Jews rather easily, and Islamic societies tended to view Jews as far less sinister than Christians. As Bernard Lewis has noted, when things were good in Christian societies, they were very good, and when things were bad, they were very bad. They were never so bad in Muslim societies. They were never quite as good either. I've always felt drawn to Muslims in a way that I never felt drawn to Christians. I loved seeing them gathering on campus for the afternoon prayers and wishing that there was a minion on campus that I could go to. I remember an event at the Wesley House where I was sitting at a table with all Muslim students, and the host brought us a big bowl of hot food and placed it in the middle of the table. We all stared at it in disbelief. The bowl was filled with a pork casserole. The Holocaust created a rage inside of me, and for decades my scholarship was powered by this rage. Fortunately, the fire slowly burned down, and I began to appreciate the common traditions that Jews, Christians, and Muslims have as much more common than we have with Buddhists and Hindus. But I'll have to get to Buddhists and Hindus at another edition of the show. For this week, I think that'll do. And what I want to wish you is a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and hope that this week goes well for you. Stay warm, stay safe.